All right, let's talk about the final phase of any Six Sigma project, the control phase. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's the last step, maybe the least exciting one. But honestly, this is where the magic happens. This is where you lock in your wins and make sure all that hard work actually sticks around for good.
So let's start with a really painful question, one that keeps a lot of leaders up at night. You run a fantastic project, right? You analyze everything, you make improvements, the numbers look great. Everyone high fives. But then you come back 6 months later, and what do you find? Performance is slipping. People are sliding back into the old, comfortable ways of doing things. It's like the project never even happened. Why? Because the success wasn't made permanent. And that is the exact problem the control phase is designed to solve. I want you to stop thinking of the control phase as the end of the project. It's not. It's the beginning of sustained high performance. It's the system you build to prevent that backsliding we just talked about. It's the discipline that ensures the value you just created doesn't just, evaporate. This isn't just about finishing the job. It's about embedding this new, better way of working deep into the company's DNA.
So, to really get our arms around this, we're going to break it down with a simple, powerful framework. First, we'll touch on that core challenge of making change last. Then, we're diving deep into 3 pillars: monitoring the process with data, formalizing the solution with systems, and sustaining the gains for real business impact. And we'll wrap it all up with a super practical checklist you can use on your very next project. Okay, let's jump into our first pillar: monitoring the process. You've heard the saying, you can't control what you don't measure, right? Well, this is that idea in action. This whole pillar is about using cold, hard data to get a completely objective look at your new process, making sure it's stable, predictable, and performing exactly the way you designed it to. And the main tool we use for this is something called Statistical Process Control, or SPC. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. Think of SPC as giving your process a voice. It's a set of tools that lets you listen to that voice and understand if everything is running normally or if it's trying to tell you that something's wrong and needs attention. It's basically like giving yourself X-ray vision into how your process is behaving in real time. But before you can pick the right SPC tool, you have to answer one huge question. What kind of data are you actually dealing with? See, all process data lives in one of 2 worlds. Over here, you've got variable data. That's stuff you can measure on a scale, like the exact time to process an invoice or the precise temperature of a machine. And over here, you have attribute data. That's stuff you count, like the number of defective parts or a simple pass or fail decision. Getting this right is absolutely crucial because it determines your entire monitoring strategy. So if you're in that world of variable, measurable data, you've got a fantastic set of tools. Let's make this simple. The X-bar and R-chart. Think of that as your process's daily health check. You use it for small, regular samples to track both the average and the consistency. What if you only get one data point at a time, like one reading per day? That's when you use the XMR chart. For bigger batches of data, the X-bar and S-chart gives you a much more precise view of what's going on. And if you need to spot tiny, subtle changes before they become big problems, the EWMA chart is your super sensitive smoke detector. The key takeaway? How you collect your data tells you exactly which chart to use. Now, what about when you're counting things, when you have attribute data? You've got a different toolkit. First, let's get one thing clear. Are you counting defective items, like a simple pass or fail, or are you counting multiple defects on a single item? If you're counting defective items, like the percentage of late deliveries, you'll use a P-chart if your daily volume changes. If you're checking the same number of items every day, the simpler NP chart is your go-to. Now, for counting multiple defects, say scratches on a car door, the C-chart is perfect if every door is the same size. But if you're inspecting things of different sizes, like different lengths of fabric, you have to use a U-chart to track defects per unit. It's all about picking the right tool for the job. Okay, you've got your monitoring system dialed in. The data is flowing, but data by itself isn't enough. So let's move to our second pillar, formalizing the solution. This is where we build the actual human and procedural systems that make the new process the default way of doing things. It's about building a fortress around your improvements so the old habits can't creep back in. And the cornerstone of this pillar is the control plan. Look, this can't be some document that just gathers dust on a shelf. It has to be a living, breathing guide for the team. And a great control plan answers 5 questions with no ambiguity. 1, what exactly are we measuring? Not everything, just the critical stuff. 2, how do we measure it? What tool? What method? Be specific. 3,
What is an acceptable result? What are the upper and lower limits? 4. How often do we check? Is it hourly, daily, weekly? And 5, maybe the most important of all, who is responsible? Who takes the measurement? And who takes action if it's out of spec? If you can't answer all 5 of these with crystal clarity, your plan isn't done.
Next up, you've got to create bulletproof documentation. Remember, variation is our enemy, right? Well, clear, simple documentation is one of our best weapons, but it has to be usable. That means you write it for the new person who starts on Monday, not for the expert who's been there 10 years. You use the language of the folks on the floor, not corporate speak. You have to explain the why, tell them the benefits of the new way so they buy into it. And be proactive. Think about what could go wrong and address it. The goal is a process so clearly documented that anyone can do it perfectly every single time. So, we've monitored the process with data, we've formalized it with systems. Now for the final pillar, the one that executives and shareholders care about the most, sustaining the gains. This is where we translate all our hard operational work into real, tangible, lasting business value. This quote from the source material is everything. You should write this down. Quantify the dollar savings and get the financial controller's concurrence. Your project is not truly finished until the savings are officially blessed by the finance department. See, getting the controller's signature turns your project's results from just a claim you're making into a hard fact on the company's financial statements. That is the ultimate proof of value. And this is what that validation looks like: a big, clear, verified number. This is the language the business speaks. It's not about sigma levels or p-values, it's about the bottom line impact. When you can put a number like this on the board, you not only justify the project you just finished, you build incredible momentum for all the future improvements you want to make. And finally, sustaining those gains requires a professional handover. This isn't just about sending a "we're done" email. This is the final act of project leadership. It means formally transitioning all the responsibilities, the control plans, everything, to the person who will own this process forever. It means documenting what you learned, what worked, what didn't, so the whole organization gets smarter. You've got to close the loop with leadership, communicate the final results to everyone, and please don't forget this last one: recognize the team and celebrate the win. That's how you build a culture that craves improvement. So, we have covered a ton of ground on the 3 pillars of a world-class control phase. Now, let's pull it all together into a final, actionable checklist of the key things you absolutely must deliver to make sure your success is permanent. This right here, this is your definition of done. When you can check every single box on this list, you know you've nailed the control phase. You have a rock-solid control plan. You've got live control charts watching the process. Your documentation is up to date, and everyone's been trained. The savings have been officially signed off by finance. You've captured your lessons learned, and you've formally closed the project. That, my friends, is what excellence looks like. And that brings us to our final thought. I want you to take a second and think about the last big improvement project you were involved in. Now, looking at it through the lens of this framework, monitoring with data, formalizing with systems, and sustaining the business gains, which of those 3 pillars was the weakest? Where did things start to fray? Because answering that question honestly for yourself, that's the first step to making sure your next project creates a legacy of success.